We continue the discussion of the status of the shulchan-aruch and the decision to follow one posek, like one authority for a community or for a city. And we're now reading in the analysis of Rabbi David Shlush a quote that he brings from Peri Hadash. Peri Hadash was written by Rabbi Hizkiah da Silva, or Di Silva, was from Megorashe Sfarad. And besides what we're going to read, we should know that when the shulchan-aruch was published, Rabbi Hizkiah da Silva wrote in his Peri Hadash very strong arguments against the shulchan-aruch, almost on every halakha. And eventually, when the shulchan-aruch became much more popular, the Peri Hadash was censored. It's very difficult to get the original edition. So the Peri Hadash says the following in terms of when can a rabbi of a locality disagree with other opinions. It says this: Im rav ha'ir rabu alav haverav, yesh lo levatel da'ato ve'en lo la'asot kisvarato. If the rabbi of a city is opposed by many other rabbis, he should withdraw his opinion and not go against them. Lo yeh harav hazeh gadol meRabban Gamliel de'acharei rabim le'atot. He says he is not greater than Rabban Gamliel in the Mishnah, who follow the opinion of the majority. And we have the rule that acharei rabim le'atot, you follow the rule of the majority. However, it doesn't mean that in any case of mahlokat, of dispute, you follow the majority. Kol zeh כשנסע ונתן עם חבריו בדין אחד ורבו עליו. This only refers to a situation where he sat in a session with other rabbis in the city and he found himself in the minority. So they are dealing with the case almost like standing to vote, and he's the minority opinion. He should withdraw his opinion. But if he has a strong evidence to refute the words of the other poskim, the other rabbis, and he has a logical argument, and he is also a knowledgeable person, he has the knowledge to back up his argument. The judge only deals with what he sees. He should not take into account the opinion of the other rabbis. And he could follow his decision whether it is more lenient or more stringent. Now it's important to discuss this very statement, because this in itself shows us how halakha evolves. Originally, when the rabbi said it in the Gemara, the judge only follows the evidence or the proof which is in front of him. It actually cleared the judge of responsibility and did not require him to inquire too much into the case. And it was said in that context. The rabbi said, "Shema yomer adayan mali batzara azot, mali batzara hazeh." A judge, someone is trained to be a judge, and then they tell him, you should know that if you rule incorrectly, it's your responsibility. And in Jewish law, where they tell him it's not just your responsibility towards this person or that person, it's your responsibility towards God. Because if you took money from one person incorrectly and you gave it to the other person, now God has to get involved and repay the person that was wrong.
The Chachamim were afraid.
Right.
The other rabbis would decide not to make a decision because they were...
Right. What the Aaron is saying, this is called Yerei Hora'ah. There were rabbis who said, I don't want to rule on anything because I'm afraid that I will be punished. But the result of that is that you have no judges and the whole system can come to a halt. So, on one hand, the rabbi said that when the dayan, when the judge is sitting in session, יראה עצמו כאילו חרב מונחת לו בין יחותיו וגיהינום פתוחה תחתיו. It's as if he's sitting on the gateway to Gehinnom, to hell, like the fires are burning there, and a sword is hanging over him. So it's really a scary situation. They want for him to understand the gravity of the situation, whether it is monetary laws or other laws. On the other hand, they said, as long as you interrogate the witnesses, you collected their testimony, and that's what they said, you don't have to bother with the question, maybe they're lying, maybe they're false witnesses. As long as you follow what is in front of you, it's okay. In later generations, it got the exact opposite meaning. Because you have to have a system of checks and balances, after the rabbis made this statement in the Talmud that just follow the testimony that's in front of you, they said, what if now the Dayan, the judge, will acquit himself by saying, I didn't do anything, that's what the witnesses said. But what if you felt that something is wrong? So, in later generations, they came up with this concept that's saying, if you have the hunch as a judge that something is wrong, even though the evidence is in front of you, everything is technically perfectly fine, but you have a hunch that something is wrong, you either keep interrogating the witnesses until they get you get the truth out of them, or you refuse to make a decision. But that's only when you feel that the person who's cheating is the defendant. If it's the plaintiff, then you have to go with the plaintiff. Otherwise, the crook will be off the hook, right? So, then in later generations, we have a teshuvah, a very important teshuvah by Rabbi Shmuel the Maharajdam, Rabbi Shmuel di Modena, who says that based on circumstantial evidence, he will try a person and hand him over to the Turkish government. This is 500 years ago. Not a nice place to be, in the hand of the Turkish police of the Ottoman Empire. But he said, even though there's no immediate proof against him, but since I have enough circumstantial evidence to convict that person was burglary, theft, and he had enough evidence to show that the gold that was found in the possession of that man came from the place, whatever. He had all the evidence, but all the other rabbis were afraid to rule that. He said, "This is how I rule." Why? Meaning, it is my eyes or my hunch, my decision to rule in that manner. So. No, dinei nefashot. No, we're not talking about capital punishment. Capital punishment, the rabbis try to avoid as much as possible. In the time of the Talmud, even though the Torah does sanction capital punishment, rabbis in Talmudic time try to, in the Mishnah already, to limit that because of the cruel approach of the Greek and the Roman empires that would execute people right and left. So they tried to limit it in response. Even though when Jews lived in Spain, they had the authority to deal with capital punishment, and there were some executions. According to Rabbeinu Asher, when Rabbeinu Asher came from Germany to Spain, he was shocked to find out that some rabbinical court do handle capital punishment, maybe in conjunction with the government. In any case, the Pri Hadash Rabbi Hizkiah de Silva says this, that if the rabbi of the city of the community analyzed the halacha and came to the conclusion that what he says is correct, he could rule like that. Even if he goes against his own master, he could do that. And he quotes the Gemara on that. This case is mentioned in Talmud. Rava was the master of those two rabbis, Rav Papa and Rav Huna, and he told them this. Says if it happens that you find, maybe he says after he passes away, after he dies, you might find a certain ruling that I wrote, and you have an argument against it. So what do? Now, if you ask today, most rabbis will tell you, no, if my rabbi ruled like that, I must follow it to the letter. I cannot disagree with that. But the Talmud clearly says, Rava told them, if you have a counter argument, don't tear it apart, but don't follow it either. Don't tear it apart. Don't discard it as something that has no value, because maybe if I were there, I would be able to explain it to you. On the other hand, you cannot follow it because you don't feel that it is correct. It's an important teaching that has, in a way, we could say, has been lost, because we're taught whatever the rabbi said, whatever the posek said, within the circles of the halachic authorities, each one must obey the previous authority, and we see clearly that it is not so. And he says, "V'zeh yitachen bedorenu lehad bedara im yeh rav mefurusam, ve'av hazman hazeh yitadina liktzat gdolei hador v'tu lo midi." He says, of course, not everyone could do that, but one who is knowledgeable is allowed to do that. And Rabbi Shlush continues to say, it quotes now the Hida Rabbi Haim Yosef David Azulai. It's about 300 years ago. He says, "Mi shemekel al pi svara yehida neged kol haposkim me'atzmo." If someone follows the opinion of one rabbi who is in the minority opinion, and this is something, by the way, that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef quotes a lot, this statement of Rabbi Azulai, says, if someone does that, yesh lenaduto ulaharimo, he must be excommunicated, he must be put on harem, don't talk to him, don't give him an aliyah, don't greet him. It's a very harsh measure. Why is that? שלא יפרשו מכל ישראל, שכל אחד יבקש בקולות אחרות פוסק שלא היה רבו, ויבוא להקל נגד כל ישראל. Because this will cause a division within the nation. Each one will follow this one, this opinion or that opinion, and we will have no unity. So Rabbi Shalosh explains that "Ayri be'adam ragil, aval betlamid hacham gamir v'savir, en ladayan en ha'mashan avrod." That refers to people who are not learned in halakha, and they don't know the reasons or the arguments. And if each one chooses to do as he wishes, then we'll have a problem. And even that, we must add, it is only when we speak about the public arena. When it's one in the privacy of his home, and that is between him and God. If he chooses not to observe halakha, it's his consideration with God. If he chooses to be observant, but he says, I know that there are several opinions, and there's one opinion, even though most people don't follow it, but this opinion is out there, I will follow it. That person will not be excommunicated or punished. What the Hidah says is when it becomes a confrontation that against the halachic authorities, and this is someone who does not know the halakha. So he says this is also supported by the Talmud in the Talmud Yerushalmi. And now here we have another concept that we have to discuss. What happens when people follow a certain halakha because they thought it's forbidden, or because they adopted it as a personal minhag? So, for example, we spoke several times about not eating rice on Pesach. There's a difference between the Ashkenazi custom, which they accepted as a norm, and between the Moroccan custom that developed in certain places, even though they knew it's not forbidden, they decided to take it upon themselves. So he says this: הסוברים שהדברים מותרים ויודעים שהם מותרים ונהגו בהם איסור, שיש להם מטרה על ידי פתח וחרטה. So, if you know that something is permitted, but you decided to take it upon yourself and say that it's asur, that I'm not going to do that, you could do atarat nedarim. It's like a neder, a vow that you took upon yourself. So, for example, if you know that rice is edible on Pesach, but you decided not to eat on Pesach, and now you want to change it, then you can go and do atarat nedarim.
Why do we have an issue with Bal Tosif?
Oh, we have a huge issue with Bal Tosif. The truth is that the Bal Tosif that do not add to the prohibitions of the Torah was limited by the rabbis only to a situation where the original mitzvah is still kept in a different manner. And the rabbis argued already in the Talmud that there is, even though on one hand the Torah says do not add to the prohibitions of the Torah, there's a commandment that's called Ushmartem et Mishmarti, guard my guard or guard my watch, whatever, and they say asu mishmeret lebishmarti, add a fence, add another layer to the fence that I put on the Torah. But so under this category, all the minhagim fall. But
that's one can decide that Tapuchei Adama is not good for the Pesach.
they did decide that it's in certain places because they would water the fields with the remnants of the breweries, and they said in certain places you cannot eat because the potatoes were watered with beer. People could decide that. And it is a problem. This is exactly what we're talking about the development of halakha, when in some cases it developed in a positive way, in some cases it developed in a negative way. And even we'll continue with that, with what the Maharajhdam says, but there's a very strong warning by the Shach, Rabbi Shabtai Cohen, who wrote a commentary on the shulchan-aruch, and he says that every time someone decides to be strict on a certain halakha, that could cause a leniency later on. Meaning, we don't think that I determine the halakha, I'm strict, I'm mahmir. Says it's impossible that something will not be caused by that. He says afilu harmea gilgulim. You don't see an immediate cause and effect, but you'll see it after a chain reaction of 100 interactions. So, for example, let's just take in the very general, at the very general level, when you look at the history of the Jewish people and of halakha, you realize that those rabbis who pushed on strict measures on every field, what they caused eventually was to push the masses away from religion. So, are they strict or lenient? They strict on Hametz on Pesach, potatoes, whatever, but they're lenient they say, we allow the detachment of Jews from halakha. I just want to finish this segment, and what he says is this, but if there is a dispute between the rabbis, and they followed the opinion of one rabbi, that has no hatara. This is not like a neder that you could nullify, and from now on you cannot follow. But Rabbi David Shalush says this is not eternal. It says it's important to say that because you might think that according to that, if a rabbi in a certain city, let's say in this case Baran Bet Yosef in Eretz Israel, according to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, that he is the Marad De'atra. So whatever the shulchan-aruch ruled 500 years ago, everybody must follow in Israel. No one can challenge him. Rabbi Shalush says this: "Ma shenogim keposek lo kiblu aleim isur, ela shenogim beisur mishum shekach pasak lehem harav." When people of a certain locality follow the halakha, is not because they accepted it as an eternal binding law, or because they think it's a minhag, but rather because this is the ruling of that rabbi in that place. Ve'im yavo posek acher ve'ifsok lahem shemutar mutarim badavar beli atara. So now, if the new rabbi with the new authority rules differently, the people could follow him, and they do not need to nullify their neder or change their custom, or stick with the custom. They are allowed to follow the ruling of the rabbi who is now their rabbi and their authority.